The SanDisk Extreme Pro 64GB memory card is the best thing for on-the-go 4K shooting. Affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is 3 Buck Theater, and this week we see the release of the long-awaited The Dark Tower, a series. Well, actually, I don't even really know how you would describe it at this point. I mean, just for a quick bit of history, the original pitching of this franchise as being a media entity was that you would have The Dark Tower, the movie, followed by Dark Tower, the TV series, which would be, the movie would be book 1, then the first season of the TV series would be book 2, then then that summer would be The Dark Tower book 3, and then the second season of the show would be book 4, so on and so forth. And that's kind of what they had intended to do with Ron Howard producing. I felt it was a bold, ambitious project, and one that we're actually kind of seeing resurface, because you've got the movie, and then you've also got a TV show now being developed where both the movie and the TV show will be considered canon in line with the books. It's getting a little complicated, getting a little bit weird, and if you're having trouble following along, trust me, you're not the only ones, because that's entirely what's killing this new movie in terms of this report popping out today, saying here that The Dark Tower tested so poorly that Sony considered replacing the director. Well, I'm really hoping that everyone at Sony gets replaced because they've gone to ass. Trust me. So it says, after nearly a decade in development, the first film adaptation of Stephen King's beloved magnum opus, The Dark Tower, is finally set to hit the big screen later this week. But a new report over at Variety holds the film's long journey isn't over yet, not by a long shot. The new piece, intriguingly titled The Dark Tower, Clashing Visions, Brutal Test Screenings, A Plagued Journey to Big Screen, details the fraught production capped off by terrible test screenings and a persistent rumor that studio brass at Sony and media rights capital sought to replace Nikolaj Arcel, or at least bring in another Helmer to fix issues that arose from said screening and other post-production worries. And this is actually becoming a bigger problem in Hollywood. We're hearing about these directors coming in and then clashing with the studio, and then as a result, because of overproduction by the studio and everything else, the way they handle it, it becomes this giant mess. I would say probably the best example in the last year would have been Batman v Superman, where you had Zack Snyder's original version of the film, which is now the extended cut, be slashed to the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut was poorly paced, almost no story up until like the last act. So much was cut out that like led us to care about the characters that it ended up just being this gigantic critical and financial mess. And that was a big problem with that. And we've seen this kind of stuff happening time and time again. Even Suicide Squad suffered from David Ayer's vision and Warner Brothers' vision, which clashed. And even though the movie was profitable and did well for the studio, there are still problems with it from a critical and fan perspective, that as it's looking right now, the sequel is not really shaping up to be in any better hands. You know what I mean? So these things are happening more and more frequently. Whereas, and I'm just going to use this again as an example, you've got Logan and Deadpool over at Fox, which were not supposed to happen in there at all in some respects, especially with Deadpool. And Fox gave them the money, gave the directors the space to work, and as a result, those films were both critical and financial darlings, showing us that if you let creators and artists create their art the way that they want to create their art, and not come in there and micromanage everything and overproduce everything, Simon Kinberg, Fox, fucking Fantastic Four. I still think that was a lot to do with the production side of it with the studio, not so much the director. And, you know, that you can have these successes. And that could have tied in here to The Dark Tower. So it says here that various sources reportedly told the outlet that the creative process, particularly in post-production, was plagued with problems and clashing visions. As I mentioned before, we see a lot of the problems in post. It's one of the reasons why reshoots are so heavily criticized when it comes to fans or movie bloggers, so on and so forth. Even though they are a natural part of the filmmaking process, something may not be working, and a lot of times has to do with clashing visions. The article adds that 3 blind screenings last October, shown before the final effects work had been completed, confirmed fears that the picture was a mess. Audiences at the test screenings couldn't understand the mythology and rated the film poorly. Again, the idea of The Dark Tower, I have not read the book. I have friends who have read the book. They've given me an overview, and this movie looks like a very truncated version of that. But because this is a series that Stephen King wrote over multiple decades, really does show you that he had put a lot of time and energy and effort into the mythology. And if they're trying to expand upon that in order to branch out into sequels, they may be fucked up. And that happens a lot with these kind of adaptations. It's why I always say that these kind of stories are better told adaptation-wise through television series. So the Dark Tower show that's coming should probably just retell this entire story and start over from scratch and forget that it happened. Because if it doesn't start over from the beginning, people might then again have trouble with the mythology and the show may not last. Throughout the story, however, MRC co-founder Madi Weizek and Sony Pictures chief Tom Rothman refute the claims. Of course they do. They're not going to come out and say this shit is fucked up right before the release of their last big summer blockbuster. Given the fact that the Emoji Movie came out last week and that the Emoji Movie failed to reach #1, just to give you guys an idea, just to put it out there in some context, both Baby Driver and Emoji Movie are both Sony released films. Baby Driver opened in June after Wonder Woman to $30 million. Emoji Movie opened in late July up against Valerian as well as War for the Planet of the Apes and still pulled in only $25 million. So it just gives you like an idea of how things are with Sony right now. How bad things are with Sony. And so, of course, they're not going to want to have any negative press come out there from the studio that could, in fact, hurt people going to the box office this weekend, or the theaters this weekend in order to see this movie. The outlet also reports that Sony and MRC spent $6 million on reshoots trying to fill in more backstory, much of it aimed at clarifying the intense battle between Idris Elba's the Gunslinger and Matthew McConaughey's the Man in Black. Additionally, reshoots reportedly focused on ways to better familiarize the audience with Midworld, the film's magical setting, ultimately leading to the cutting of 5 minutes of exposition and the addition of a new scene that combined ideas that had been sprinkled throughout the entire picture. They should just leave in the 5 minutes of exposition. Trust me, people want to know what's going on. But again, those are, as a person who knows not a great deal about the franchise, but has watched the trailers, I don't know why they hate each other. That rivalry has not been explained in a way that makes it compelling for me to go see the outcome of this particular rivalry. And then also what Midworld is, it just kind of seems odd. The trailers focus on the kid. The kid, yes, is a part of the book, but it also feels like, I don't know, any one of those movies that uses children in them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like Iron Man 3, The Mummy 2, those kind of movies that bring a kid in order to appeal to that audience. Jurassic World. You had fucking, what else is there? There's a bunch of other movies that have done this. It's a device that they use in order to sell to a younger audience, but not a lot of people like it. And that's kind of what the trailer for The Dark Tower said to me. It's kind of, the way I looked at that is it felt almost kind of like Neverending Story, just updated. I was really waiting for something like Falcor to show up. Now, granted, if Falcor showed up, I would effectively jizz my pants, because yes, but in the same time, that's my point. It's like the marketing is not very good on this. Although the story claims that when Arcel delivered an early cut of the picture that alarmed Weizek and Rothman, they considered bringing in a more experienced filmmaker to recut it. Both men deny the allegation. Other sources told Variety that Sony and MRC decided against bringing on another filmmaker, perhaps because it would have been too costly, but that studio brass, along with producers like Ron Howard and Akiva Goldsman, remained heavily involved in the editing process. Ron Howard's popping up on this one too. That's kind of funny. Because I was just going to make a joke about, oh, well, I mean, Disney did that with the Han Solo movie. But yet Ron Howard, who was shepherding the adaptation, with a decade ago, it makes sense he'd be on board. Akiva Goldsman also being on board. Yeah, okay. Arcel himself also hit back at the claims, telling Variety, "I felt supported throughout, and they all looked to me for answers. If someone had jumped into my editing room and taken over, I would have left instantly." Again, these are things that you hear about all the time. When IndieWire spoke with Arcel earlier this week, the filmmaker was upbeat about his work on the project and maintained that at least one person was also very happy, King himself. And that, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like, I haven't heard King trash this at all, but King generally doesn't trash the adaptations of his work. I think King genuinely enjoys every adaptation of his work because it's always someone else's vision of his story. He has a little thing, and this is really cool if you don't know this. They're called $1 babies. So you can actually contact Stephen King and be like, hey, I would like to make a fan adaptation of one of your stories. And he'll be like, cool, $1. But you have to send me a copy when it's done. And then, oh, okay, cool. So you give him the dollar, you get the rights, you make your project. You can't make any money off of it. You can't sell it or nothing like this. Something if you just want to make. And then you send him a copy of it. He will then watch it and then put it on a shelf that's marked $1 babies. And I mean, that's what I've been hearing for years. King just loves those kind of adaptations. I think that's why he's always been eager to kind of sell them off. You know, not that money doesn't play a factor, but I think genuinely Stephen King just enjoys someone else taking his work and running with it. Maybe they come up with a better ending, like in the case of The Mist from 2007, where King was like, yeah, the ending of the movie, oh man, way better than the ending of the book, and things like that, which is how I view Stephen King. Now, it finishes up here by saying, as Arcel said, he was really happy. He wrote me this expression that's in the novels about forgetting the face of your father, and he actually ended the email by saying, you didn't forget the face of your father. We'll see what audiences think when the film hits theaters later this week. So there's that. Right now, Sony is trying to run damage control on this. They're trying to make sure that that people are like gonna go see it. They want butts in seats. But there's been this big kind of anti-Sony rhetoric happening for a while now. And I'm not going to say that I haven't added to that because, oh, yeah, look out for my next video and you'll see exactly how I've added to it. But at the same time, Sony at this point, I believe, is the worst studio that's out there for a number of reasons. They don't handle properties well. They attack their fans. They attack the audiences. And as a result, they're paying dearly. And then I think they got a bit too big for their britches, and I don't mind seeing them get knocked down a couple pegs, to be honest with you. That being said, if I can go see this movie this weekend, I will try. I don't know if I will. I do want to see it. My girlfriend wants to see it. Maybe we'll go Thursday night and check it out. But in the meantime, are you guys going to see it? Do you think it's going to be any good? Does it just look like ass? Does it do a disservice to the books? I've heard racism plays a big part, so by having the gunslinger be black over being white will have some implications or some altercations that it's going to make shit different for like the second book if they ever do it. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been $3 Theater. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day and peace out.